Yeah, and we are live. Manisha, over to you.
Dear delegates and participants, welcome back to the final episode of Femvest 2021, a first of its kind virtual summit that has captured the imagination of women and men alike. This event brings together industry leaders, professionals, common investors, and women from all walks of life to ideate on and advance the narrative of financial empowerment of women. This virtual summit is being brought to you by HerMoneyTalks, India's first one stop financial platform for women in partnership with BSE India. We have had 6 days of very insightful talks on capital markets, on resurgent India, on how to use lean thinking for a positive mindset, and on the human element in fintech, and on issues and topics that impact all of us from a personal finance perspective. We have also had equally stimulating panel discussions and talks on the risk taking approach for women and on the topics of leadership in BFSI, on the story of Indian women, on life hacks from the fund management, on the central place of financial awareness, and on innovation in BFSI, as well as five very informative investor education sessions. Today is day 7 and the concluding day of Femvest 2021 by Harmony Talks and BSC India. We have a very intriguing panel discussion today, followed by a fireside chat with a very interesting personality from Switzerland lined up just for you. So, welcome all once again to the concluding day of Femvest 2021. I would first like to welcome Mr. Hemant Korur, co-founder and Chief Financial Officer of Harmony Talks, for the welcome address. Mr. Hemant, over to you.
Thank you, Manisha. Um Welcome all to this final day of Femvest. So we kick off yet another fantastic and absorbing day. But I will give you no more spoilers than Manisha has already given you about what's in store for us. Today's theme is intuition. On the one side, you have intuition. On the other side, you have knowledge or research or due diligence, as you may call it. Now, we all know that knowledge is central to decision making in any field. It's an understatement to say that knowledge is required for decision making. But what about intuition? Now, intuition plays its own part. Most business leaders have it. We have all used it at some point. We all have it to some measure, and all have used it at some point in our lives. Uh, Sometimes we may come to rely on intuition in a systemic way, in a consistent way. So the question arises: just how much is too much? Now, this is one question I hope will get answered today in one of the panel discussions. If you look at intuition itself, in itself, it is accumulated experience, accumulated knowledge in the area of the decision that you're about to take. It's our reflex thinking. Intuition uh, is it's what sits on your shoulder and breathes into your ear. What to do when faced with a dilemma. Intuition is what sits in your tummy and rolls your guts when faced and tells you what not to do when faced with danger. Intuition is that invisible voice that has no body or face, but a voice that you have come to trust in your life. Now, psychologists swear by it, while rationalists swear at it. And but when used optimally, intuition can actually make you look like a genius. But when overdone or when overused, it can actually make you look crazy. So that's what intuition is all about. Uh, it's a very absorbing discussion that's lined up for us. We are pitting intuition against knowledge. It's a counterpart, the other side of the coin. But that's the theme of the day. With that, I welcome all our panelists, all our delegates, and all our viewers from wherever you are on this very bright, sunny Sunday evening to this final concluding day of Femvest. Over to you, Manisha.
Thank you, Mr. Hemant, for that lovely story and the message it conveys. As we kick off the day's proceedings, I request the audience to share their questions, if any, in the chat window. These will be addressed in the Q&A session. We now come to the most awaited event of the evening, an observing panel discussion on a toss up between intuition and knowledge. It promises to be a riveting panel discussion with invigorating exchange of ideas and a balanced dissection of the human psyche. When it comes to investing, we have a bevy of highly accomplished panelists here today with us, whom I would like to take this opportunity to introduce. I would request each of the panelists to come on stage by switching on their videos as I introduce them. Firstly, it is a pleasure to invite on stage Ms. Anjali Malhotra, an angel investor and startup mentor. She holds 29 years in media, FMCG, retail, and BFSI sectors in diverse roles for revenue, marketing, sales, digital transformation, customer experience, product, analytics, and technology functions. Her last role was Chief Customer, Marketing, Digital, and IT Officer at Aviva India. She has been recognized by the industry as CX100 and Digi100 Top 10 CDO, Digitalist, Thought Leader, Marketer of the Year, Media and Entertainment, and the best use of technology in marketing over the years. Having made investments in every over many early stage businesses, her areas of interest lie in media, content, education and technology enabled B2C models. Welcome, Ms. Anjali.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Next, I would like to welcome on stage Ms. Swati Mittal, CFO of Wadhwani Foundation. Ms. Swati is the Chief Financial Officer at the foundation since 2010. She has had prior stints with Deloitte Haskins and Sales, International Taxation, United Rentals Incorporation, Corporate Finance, a listed US company, and a startup in US. She is a chartered accountant and a certified public accountant from Colorado State and holds the BCom and LLB from Gujarat University. Welcome, Ms. Swati.
Hi, thank you. Glad to be here.
Next, I would like to welcome on stage Dr. Jasmine Gupta, National Head, Virtual Bank, Digital Phygital, FinTech, Equitas Small Finance Bank. A TEDx speaker, she is also invited to speak at national and international conferences and summits on management learning and leadership in India, Europe, US, and Southeast Asia. She is a leadership speaker and visiting faculty in top management institutes like IIMs, IITs, and TISS. She is a top performing banker who has been awarded for her achievements at international conventions in Australia, Switzerland, and Thailand. She has been recognized as 101 top global training and development minds by the Economic Times, ET Now, and World HRD Congress. Welcome, Dr. Jasmine.
Thank you, Manisha. Glad to be a part of this event.
We also take great pleasure in welcoming on stage Ms. Mohini Mahadevia. Ms. Mohini is a certified financial planner from the Financial Planning Standards Board, India. She specializes in helping clients with financial advisory, estate planning, training, etc. In her career, has been a business manager, financial planner, and a guest lecturer under the NSDC STAR program conducted by BSE Institute. Welcome, Ms. Mohini.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Our moderator will be Ms. Nisari Mahesh, founder and CEO of HerMoneyTalks. The topic of today's panel discussion is Intuition or Knowledge. What's more important for investors and entrepreneurs? As we kick off today's exciting panel discussion, I request the audience to share their questions, if any, in the chat window. These will be addressed in the subsequent Q&A session. Over to you, Ms. Nisari.
Thank you, Manisha. Good afternoon, everyone. An important part of investment is decision making, whether it is investing for your future or investing for your venture. So, how often do we rely on our gut feel or instinct to make decisions? Today's is a data-driven world. Companies and individuals make decisions based on data, robo-advisory, and they say it is objective and unbiased. But when it comes to women, it's a non-fact that they are not actively tracking information or data of financial products and updates from the business world. They haven't had the opportunity to acquire knowledge in these fields because of the tradition we follow. The tradition is like it's a man's department. But at the same time, we have seen many examples of the intuition of women when it comes to savings, household plannings, and they're doing it really well. So today, I would like to discuss with the women leaders here on the panel on their thoughts about intuition versus knowledge in practical business or financial situations. Those who are attending it in the YouTube channel, please leave your comments or your questions in the live chat. Those who are in the panel, you can leave the questions in the chat box. We'll finish the discussions first and we'll take the questions from you after that. So my first question is to Anjali. Anjali, you are a person with a diverse experience. You have worked with women very closely in the field of entertainment, media, beauty, wellness, and surprisingly, switch from there to finance. So when it comes to finance, consumers, especially women, are expecting comfort and security while making purchases or investment decisions. But surprisingly, if you take insurance as a product, in India, we see generally very less women insurance holders. Insurance is only taken in the name of the man of the houses in most cases. So does it say that women are less intuitive when they plan about their future or unforeseen situations?
Hi, Nisari. It's a very loaded question, so I'll go one by one. Women are more intuitive is a well-known fact. And that comes from the fact that we hold more empathy. We're possibly more listening to our body. In fact, it's a scientifically proven fact now that women, the intuition actually comes from what we call the gut feeling, right? It's something that you feel in the center here at the stomach. It's now actually called the second brain. It's well known and it's proven fact that it gives neurons and signals to the first brain, which is here in the head, and helps decision making. And it's interesting for women because the signals are sent to the right side of the brain, and the left side of the brain is the logic or the thinking brain. And women have a thicker corpus callosum. I'm just going a little bit into science, but really it's where it becomes interesting for women. And therefore, they're able to more actively associate the two parts of the brain, the logical brain and the intuitive brain, which is getting signals from what is called the gut brain. And they are able to therefore more quicker and faster use adaptive, intuitive thinking for decision making, more than men. And that's a proven scientific fact. Now, when it comes to investment, how do women fare? Well, as a nation, I think we're very poor in financial literacy. There are studies, many studies over the years that have shown that if we compare ourselves to developing countries or more developed countries, we are far behind in terms of our ability to manage money. Yeah, and one of the reasons is really the fact that we don't have open conversations about money as we're growing up, and it's a lot to do with the way children are groomed right in the beginning. Usually the parents when they discuss money, it's a conversation. The children are not in the room, and it's a very subtle conversation, and it's very different from where the other parts of the world where children are sent to earn early in life, and they're told how to spend, how to save, and grow up with a certain muscle of managing money. It doesn't happen here. Suddenly you become an adult. Children are very protected. You don't discuss it. And suddenly you become an adult and you're told to go out and, now start managing finances. And that capability doesn't exist. It's not in our academics either. It's not discussed at home either. We are a country of poor financial literacy. Women are worse because of the traditional roles we play, because the fact that mostly it's how we've grown up, right? The men have led more the provider role and the women have been more the home role. Now, those roles are changing a lot in today's times, and especially where there are working women, especially the millennials who are thinking differently. And the millennials is now a working population. The Gen Z is also now entering the workspace and they are thinking differently. However, we become what we see in our childhood. And since our parents had lived certain roles, those roles tend to get imbibed and we play them out. And even working women, the percentage of women taking independent financial decisions is very, very low. You're right when you said that insurance coverage for women is very low. We did a little dipstick. I was in insurance. We did a little dipstick within our team in the function. And this is like urban, Delhi, Gurgaon, and, working women, middle management. And we said, how many of you have a term insurance plan? And how many of your husbands hold term insurance plans? Some of the women really turned around and said, oh my God, I never thought of it like this. Why don't I have one for myself? I'm also a breadwinner. I deserve it equally, but I never thought of it that when we bought our first insurance policy, it was for the husband and not for the wife. And clearly a lot of them felt, oh my God, we must do this. And they did it. But I think that realization to say that I need to plan this for myself, and not just for myself, for my family, for my children, is something that dawns either very late or very little. I think that's something that we need to change. And intuition or no intuition, that fabric hasn't changed. So, whilst women are more intuitive, and even with money, so even in the households, on a rainy day, it's mostly the women that will have some money stashed away somewhere and they'll bring it out. So that intuitiveness about saving is there, but the boldness and the confidence to take decisions about money, to be able to take investment calls, to evaluate financial products, to say, what's the right fit for me? I think that is what is lacking. Yeah.
I really like the way you put it, relating the science, why is it so and what is happening. Really liked it. And I would like to ask, is it because we still think men are providers of the family and women ignore their contributions to the family finances? I mean, women themselves are undervaluing what they are doing. They still feel my contribution is very little, so that doesn't need to be replaced.
Actually, that's changed a lot over the years. Initially, yes, this was clearly a very overriding thought that, it's the man who is the provider and I'm maybe supporting even if I'm earning. But that's changed. You look at women entrepreneurs today, you see very successful women in the corporate world, many women who are single, okay, and providers themselves. But despite that, they shy away from making financial decisions. It's maybe something cultural. It's something that we're just not brought up to do. It's the lack of confidence. And surprisingly, you'll also find a dichotomy, because in the BFSI industry, a lot of, I'd say CEOs, especially in the banking sector, are actually women. So you'd be surprised to see the number of women who hold top-notch roles in the BFSI segment. So it's a bit of a dichotomy. But despite of that, the mass majority of women still feel that when it comes to, taking financial decisions, even though I'm earning, but I would generally consult my father or my husband, is this the right for me? Should I do this or not? Is this a great plan? And so on. And I'm not saying it's not changing, but I still think we have a long way to go.
Sure. I'll come back to you. That is interesting. I think more points needs to be added there. I'll come back to you. Now I'm moving to Swati. I'm continuing in the same point on women's intuition. Swati is is a CFO of Wadhwani Foundation and is helping a lot of women entrepreneurs with knowledge to make better decision making. So I'm aware that you are not directly dealing with the clients. Still, I would like to hear this from you as a representative of Wadhwani, that are women entrepreneurs applying their intuition when it comes to business decisions, especially when they have to make a capital investment in business?
So, what we've really seen is that today knowledge is available plenty. It's just at your fingertips. So at least the set of group of people we work with, right from the college students that are there to the startups to the SMEs, they're definitely the necessity to have knowledge before you make a decision. That awareness is there. Yes, people are overwhelmed, and that is why they end up looking for help and mentors and support and counseling. But today's generation definitely knows how to go out there and get the information. Now, of course, I'm talking about people who, about the children who have access to the internet at all points of time, who are able to, they know how to do research and find their information. But at the same time, there is that set of people where that sort of awareness is still not there, and they're totally reliant on their, co-founders in terms of the knowledge that, the financial side of knowledge that they're seeking. But overall, to answer your question, are the women entrepreneurs today, are they going mainly on intuition, or are they, do they feel the need to have the knowledge? The answer is yes. So far, whatever we've seen, they know that they need the knowledge. They don't have it, they seek help. So that is there. Intuition is something that is always going to be a part of everything that we do. It's just that if we really need to have the knowledge to be able to use the intuition, right? It's not like, oh, I know this particular company is going to do well, let me go invest all my money there. Even to know how to do it, that to understand the risk before you do it is very important. So I mean, in our experience, what we are really noticing is that people understand the importance of knowledge, and seeking the knowledge, they know where to go and seek knowledge. Sometimes they're looking for deeper knowledge and they know it's available and they reach out for help, which is very good. I think Anjali, as an angel investor, has worked with more women entrepreneurs. She'll probably be able to answer that question more directly. Mine is, of course, based on the knowledge that I've gained from our teams and the various, field team members that we have.
Yeah, you rightly mentioned it. Well, what I think is, like Anjali mentioned, in family finances, we have that option to outsource the things to our husbands or our fathers. But when it comes to business, especially women-only business, we have to take that call sometimes, whether to go for funding or take a loan or invest our money, how much to put. I think we have to take that call. So that is where I was thinking, are women really doing it? Are they using their intuitive power, or are they taking advice from people and just taking a decision about it? I'll come back to you anyway about it. Yeah, you want to add something to it?
No, I was saying it's, I won't have the statistics for you, but the people that I have come across, I think it's a split. It's, there are women who really know how and what money they need. So they've planned the finances for the year 1, year 2, and accordingly they're planning their funding. They know how to go seek it. There is that other set of women who don't have that knowledge and are definitely looking for answers, but they're not just going, oh, you know what, I feel I should do this and therefore I'll go do it. That's not happening. At least not amongst the people that I have met and interacted with.
Okay. Thank you, Swati. I'll come back to you. I'm moving to Jasmine now. Jasmine, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Swati, but in a slightly different way. As you are heading a consumer banking, women in general are cautious when they see something new, or whether it is a new product or a service or whatever. So, or a new concept, it can be anything. Does this inbuilt intuition help them or hamper them when it comes to financial products that they haven't tried before? Like it can be a loan product or it can be a savings product, or while taking some small risks like a loan. What is your thoughts about that?
Yeah. Hi, Nisari. So, I think so far we had very good views from Anjali and Swati. And I would definitely like to add to it from a consumer banking perspective. So when we talk of intuition and knowledge, what I feel is more than being contradictory, they are more complementary. Because in order to use your intuition, to make any investment decision, you need to have the basic knowledge. You need to have the basic level of knowledge. I think even Hemant, when he introduced intuition, he mentioned that intuition is about making use of accumulated knowledge, making use of accumulated experience. So I think knowledge is the foundation. Yes, information is available freely these days, but making sense of that information is, what knowledge is and what application of knowledge is. And I think that is a first step towards even looking at whether I can use my intuition for making any investment decision, is how I would like to, put my thoughts around intuition and knowledge. Now, when we talk of, products, women have now become important consumer segments that none of the brands, none of the industries can ignore. And I've seen lots of industries coming out with women-specific products because women are considered to be important decision makers. So I can quote the recent Femina research, wherein they had researched household women and what is their contribution towards investment decisions. It is very clear that women either jointly contribute or on their own contribute to a number of financial decisions, whether it is investment in fixed deposits, or whether investment in SIPs, or whether it is investment in gold, or even when buying a housing loan. That is where they all influence the buying decisions. So I think that's the reason many banking companies, they've come out with women-specific products. The reason is the needs of women are different, and people have now understood that if we want to cater to this segment, which is coming up as an important consumer segment, we need to have tailor-made products for them. And hence we find even insurance products, for that matter, we have women-specific insurance products. Now, even women, when we talk of women, it cannot be categorized as just one segment. We have low income women, we have middle income, we have high net worth women, we have educated, uneducated, we have NRIs, we have rural. So, within the women segment as well, we have diversified requirements, diversified needs. And I think it's important that we are able to address, needs of all these women. And the way an NRI woman would take an investment decision is going to be very different from an HNI woman to a rural woman. Let me give you an example. For example, microfinance. In microfinance, we have rural women where we lend 10,000, 25,000 rupees of, small ticket size amount to help them start their own businesses. Now, to convince these women that it is important for them to invest, to save money, and to put money aside for their future goals is also a challenge because, they have very limited resources. However, they still, start investing for their specific goals with 500 rupees a month, 200 rupees a month, and that's how they start. Now, this investment pattern and the decision that goes into making this investment is going to be very different from someone whose goal is to buy maybe a diamond jewelry or maybe a car and wants to save on a monthly basis to achieve that goal. So I think a goal-based investment option is going to be very different for all the categories of women that we talk of. And every woman would make a decision depending on what she has learned, what she has known, the environment from where she comes from, and what she sees in terms of the offerings in the market, and then make a decision. So I think this entire financial space, in fact, now fintechs are coming up. And fintechs are going one step deeper because now they cater to women-only segments with very, very niche women's segment offerings. So I think that's going to be another disruptive moment in this entire investment space as far as I think the women's segment is concerned.
Thank you, Jasmine. Actually, we also realized the same thing, because when we started Her Money Talks, we were just like, we cater to women. We work for the financial inclusion and empowerment of women. But as we started talking to people, as we started talking to women in different subsegments, whether it is women entrepreneurs, the young working women, or the urban and semi-urban women, we realized one thing, like you mentioned, whether they all fall into the same category of women, each subsegment have different tastes, preferences, and we have to talk to them in a totally different language. Then we were also we realized this when we start talking to people and had to fine tune our language and our presentations and everything as we address each subsegment of women. So that was wonderful. I'll circle back to you. As one round of conversation with the panelists is over, it is becoming clearer that women are not coming forward to make financial decisions like Anjali and Swati has mentioned. So yeah, I mean, there is more that kind of conversations have to happen today. And I'm circling back to Anjali now. Anjali, my question is, women are known for their empathy. This is a quality which is very much, I mean, synonymous to women. So had the empathetic nature helped you as a leader in making decisions in your role as a mentor, a business leader, and a digital strategist? If so, it will be good if you can share an anecdote.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Women are known to be more empathetic. And I think the empathy comes from the nurturing nature of women, where I think the ability to understand another's feelings, to be sensitive to another perspective, and that helps in relating to people. Eventually, I think at the core of all success, be it in business or in personal life, the core is managing people and managing relationships. And I think empathy goes a long way in creating relationships that are effective. And so, I mean, clearly this question is not about financials. Since you've asked me how that helped me as a business leader, I'll give you a few examples. So clearly, as a business person, you've got to work in teams, be it a team player, you may be a leader, or there is always a need to work with cross-functional teams, see different perspectives, because priorities could be different, but at the end of the day you have to collaborate and create unified results for the organization. Without empathy, it would be very, very difficult to achieve much of that, because people coming from different needs, different backgrounds, different perspectives, different functions will always have their own agenda. But to be able to come to a meeting ground and be able to say, hey, I appreciate what you're saying, but here's what I feel. And then somewhere you create a meeting ground and say, okay, let's create this as the way forward. And that I think can come only through empathy. And not to say that men don't carry empathy, they do as well. And I think it helps when both work collaboratively together. But yes, it's certainly dialed up where women are concerned. When it comes to, as a digital strategist, for instance, I think their listening to customers is very, very important. And everyone has their own programs of listening, be it CSAT programs or RNPS or TNPS or whatever else that you're doing, but some mechanism of understanding and being empathetic for customer experience with respect to your brand, I think is very, very important. And if once one is able to capture that, appreciate it, and use that to then transform your journeys. Because in digital, it's all about the UX, the UI, the experience, lesser number of clicks, more efficiency, better delight, more satisfaction. How does that happen? And how do you create those journeys? We do design thinking workshops, for instance. And essentially, what are we doing there? It's about inculcating empathy and understanding of where are the customers' woes and where are the problems and how do we better solution for them, and how do then we translate that into digital journeys and then create solutions online to resolve. So clearly, it's at the very basic fundamental of it. Even as a mentor, as an advisor or an investor working with startups, especially so with women, I think the way you sort of appreciate the challenges that are being faced, the key concerns in the business model. Does it need pivoting? Are we solving for the right thing? Are we creating the right solutions? What are your key challenges? Even when you raise funding, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's a lot about managing people. isn't it? And it's about being able to put across your point. And I think this is such a fundamental thing to have as far as basic communication is concerned. It does help in addressing issues and resolving them. And I think irrespective of what role you play, I think, empathy is at the basic of it.
Thank you, Anjali. I'm moving to Mohini. Mohini, you are helping people with financial planning. So as we mentioned, as we were discussing here, it is a fact that women lack exposure to financial matters. So according to you, how important is it for a woman to have a specific knowledge about a financial product that she's going to invest in, and how and where she get the knowledge from?
Right. So in my experience, again, I'd like to break this into two parts. Firstly, with regards to, why is it important? So you spoke about segmentation, and so did Miss Jasmine earlier, about when we talk of women investors in general, you cannot club them all together. So depending on what segment you're from, like say, for example, if it's a young working woman who's in a very nascent stage of her career, you can expect such women to obtain knowledge from, your mainstream media or following, your digital media and, other sources of information. But when you talk of women who are, say, for a decade and a half, all they've done is maybe say look after their families, regardless of whether, they have an independent career of their own, but they are not used to that sort of independent mindset. So that's where a more one-on-one, conversation or a very personalized sort of way of transmitting information is useful. So when I speak to my clients, there are some women where I set out a lot of additional time so that I can speak to them in a language that they are comfortable with, citing examples that they are very familiar with. Because if I just start talking technical stuff with them, it doesn't make sense, because I cannot expect them to absorb the information the same way that a younger person who's been so used to, absorbing this information is. And with regards to, how this is also changing, I'm seeing a drastic change. So while we spoke of women depending on like their male counterparts, I'm also seeing a very rapid change across age groups about men also depending on their female counterparts. So that again comes from a place where there are certain products where the men may have not heard of those before, but the women, through some sources, even if it's say a WhatsApp forward or it's, some newspaper cutting that they've read, they do pick up these things much faster. So the absorption rate I've seen is way more. So I think that's one bit which is changing, and if used correctly, I think it can make a drastic difference. It's not rocket science. It's just cracking how to speak to each separate segment of women and how to give them the information.
That's interesting. And I'm curious, actually. I would like to know, when you mentioned that certain products which men are not aware and women picks up faster, can you explain what exactly? Can you tell me an example?
So I have, again, this is plainly speaking from my experience. So within, say, the insurance segment, your basic traditional life insurance plans that combine your investments and savings are quite common. Of course, term plans are picking up now, but there are a lot of other specialized products, specifically within, say, the health insurance ambit. Products that cater specifically to certain kind of critical illnesses, or there are products that cover very niche kind of hospitalization expenses. So these are places where I've seen women come and ask questions. Or say with regards to investment in gold, I've had so many women come and ask me that, so far I've been buying jewelry or I've been buying gold coins. What are these gold bonds that people are talking about? I've been receiving these emails from my bank. So it's like they're modernizing the traditional investment avenue. So instead of, say, going and opening like a regular fixed deposit, maybe they've seen some pamphlet somewhere. So say they'll ask, what is this sweep in FD? Or what is this SIP that comes with an insurance? So it's those new things that catch their imagination faster, which I think is a great compliment. Because at the end of the day, if you're talking of a household, I don't think we should have like a man versus a woman role. Decisions have to be made together, and you can't expect one person to have like an all-round knowledge. So I think combined, this can be a game changer.
That's very interesting to hear, actually. What from our experience, yeah, like you rightly mentioned, when it comes to gold or a small saving scheme, yeah, women are well informed. But I'm surprised to know that women are interested in especially health insurance. But as per the data, what the data speaks, and in our experiences also, and our interactions with other people also, what we have come to know that insurance awareness is very less. And even if the families, they are taking health insurances, Usually the male member take a health insurance and they take a family floater. So it's interesting to know that women are aware of this kind of critical illnesses and they are coming out and asking. I'll circle back to you. That's an interesting point. I'm moving to Swati. Swati, as you have a background in helping women entrepreneurs on various projects, so how often you have seen people putting themselves on their companies at risk by not doing the proper due diligence, or they lack knowledge about some particular areas, whether it is regulatory or legal, all those stuffs. As many women entrepreneurs are part of your platform, can you share some anecdotes, if any, or from your experience?
So our field team has, they often come back with the feedback that the entrepreneurs in general, and I'm not segregating them between women and men right now, but entrepreneurs in general do have, there's a big lacuna in their knowledge in terms of the legal requirements and the financial requirements. And we do have modules that have been put together to help them gain that knowledge. We cannot give them that knowledge because we operate in 20 countries and we cannot customize it to that level. But how to go get that knowledge, we do have content related to that. That knowledge, I don't think is so much of a women thing. We see great ideas coming from, the men as well. And but there is that lack of knowledge because they are subject matter experts and they don't know this. So I overall am going to say there is that gap, but versus women versus men, whereas the gap larger, we won't really have those statistics right now with us. But yeah, there is an overall lack of that financial and legal knowledge, and there is also that fear that it is very cumbersome to set up an organization, and that is one area where a lot of people are looking for advice and support. So that is definitely a big area, irrespective of men and women. That's probably good news because it's in a way that it's not just women that are feeling overwhelmed. It's the same with men as well.
Can I add to that, Nisri?
Sure.
No, I think very well said. Thank you, Swati. But it depends upon the domain that you're thinking about or working in. When it comes to technology, say, or legal domain, you can't use intuition. I mean, really,
Absolutely.
it would really fall short because there is a certain expertise there which you've got to acquire, and that comes from a certain knowledge and expertise. You either have that proficiency or you hire somebody to fill that proficiency gap. And that's really not the domain to use your intuitive abilities, because there is a certain pattern and a knowledge base. It's trends, it's facts, it's figures. You have to know it. There are other domains, with regard to the business model, consumer behavior, etc. Research, for instance, when you do a lot of marketing, people will actually tell you that I had this gut feeling that this is what it will be. So I conducted this research and it ratified what I felt would happen. So in some areas, it's great to use intuition and these things, and then use, of course, knowledge and facts to sort of create a rationale and a reasoning and a logical explanation for a decision. But in some areas, you just can't fake it. You can't take that risk.
Yeah, legal won't follow logic.
Yeah, I agree with you. And especially I'll tell from my experience, especially as we are operating in the fintech domain, it's a mix of technology and finance where there are a lot of regulatory aspects. From our experience is that, knowledge is available everywhere, but sometimes it can be, misleading information also from various, because one person may say this is right, the other person may say this is not right. And at the same time, it is very difficult to get expertise or experts to help with some specific things, especially when it comes to technology, which is very dynamic and changing very fast. So that may be a challenge which many women entrepreneurs, not just women, actually, it's more both men and women, especially startups facing, and startups in the technology front facing when it comes to new developments, new things, new facts, and all the things. So I'll come back to that. I'm moving to Jasmine now. Jasmine, you have done a research on financial inclusion as part of your doctoral studies. So can you throw some light on what is it that women look for when it comes to being financially included? Given the taking that investment decisions are a huge part of achieving financial inclusions, can you correlate your research findings to our discussions today between intuition and knowledge when it comes to personal investments?
Yeah, thanks. So my research on financial inclusion and digitalization was based on the India Stack story that we talk of, which was a comparative study of pre-Jandan and post-Jandan and the impact and what is the way forward, and international case studies where we studied what M-Pesa is doing in Kenya, and how other developing countries are actually revolutionizing in the financial inclusion space. So when we talk of financial inclusion, by definition, it means one should have a bank account. If you have a bank account, you are financially included. But of course, we know that that's not enough. So even if the numbers of India Stack, the JAM framework, as they say, the Jandan Aadhaar Mobile, it looks impressive. We may have opened crores of accounts, but when we look at the utility of these accounts, the balance in the accounts, the usefulness of the accounts, of course, it falls short as in terms of what financial inclusion objectives are required to be achieved. So financial inclusion is not just about opening the account. It is also about having the best investment options at your fingertips. It is also about having the best lending options made available to all the segments of the people. It's also about, while insurance is an important thing, and now we have this Pradhan Mantri insurance schemes and Atal Pension Yojanas and all, I think they've made an impact. However, a lot of work needs to be done in terms of, financial literacy, because many people, even after opening bank accounts, even after having taken these policies, they just don't know what to do when they have to claim the money. They don't know what to do with the account number that they have got. And we have seen many cases wherein the main objective, which was to protect people from money lenders, protect people from high interest rates, prevent suicides, all of these things still continue. So I would also like to bring the fintech example here, wherein we've seen lots of cases recently wherein people got onto taking loans from some of the apps, maybe not regulated enough, and there were lots of suicide cases. So a lot of regulation is required. A lot of I think NGOs are also doing lots of interesting things to ensure that financial inclusion is achieved in the true letter and spirit. While the World Bank records and reports has actually brought India up the level amongst the top 50 countries as far as financial inclusion is concerned, from 250 to 50 was a good jump in 2 years, but a lot of work needs to be done there. And that's where I think and here the distinction between men and women is not so much. So our research said that while women are financially illiterate, men are equally financially illiterate. And here the research findings did not say that there's a big difference between men and women. So sometimes it is our impression, or maybe sometimes we feel that there is necessarily big difference in the way men look at investments or women look at investments. I completely feel that it depends on your background, your environment, and your situation in life, which determines your investment decisions. So I think that's to sum it up as far as the research findings were concerned. I think financial literacy, I think you all are also doing lots of activities around financial literacy. That's where I think people need to do a lot of things. Fintechs, insurance companies, banks, all need to work a lot in this direction. And I think now there are many, many new use cases wherein we have this Bharat mobile banking app, wherein people who don't have smartphones, but they are able to do their transactions on feature phones. So the technology is evolving. It's just that we have to ensure that the technology reaches the right segment, the right people, and they are able to make use of the technology. And I think that's where the gap is, and that's where a lot of work needs to be done.
So Jasmine, you're mentioning the technology gap is with the urban women or with the rural? Because what I have seen is that the rural women who are into this micro loans, small savings, actually they are very active in contributing to their family finances. So where exactly the gap is happening?
Yes, so I think women, even if you look at the unorganized versus organized sector, women are more employed. More women are employed in the unorganized sector as compared to the organized sector. More women in rural India are coming forward and contributing to their families and, doing their own businesses. So it is not between rural or urban, or it is not between urban or urban poor or urban rich. I think when we talk of financial inclusion, even when it comes to lending, not all the villages are covered. There are lots of interior parts of the country which are not yet covered. So where people face the same challenges, and while the numbers are there on the paper, if you go to those villages, you will find out that the development as was expected has not happened. I think there are lots of corporate BC models that are coming up. There are lots of new innovative ideas shaping up, so that people with the kirana stores offering the banking services, and everyone can do transactions through the Aadhaar enabled payment systems wherever you are, whichever bank you're accounted, you can do the transactions, you can withdraw the cash. So there are lots of technological innovations happening. There are lots of business models getting coming out to fill this gap. And I'm positive that next 5 years down the line, the situation would be much better. And it would not be just a bank account which will call a person financially included, but he would be a holistically financially included person, with completely insured and having some investments, whether it is gold based SIP or recurring deposit, having the knowledge and having access to this knowledge and this possibility of investment options. I think that is where the gap should get bridged in next few years.
Sure, that's very interesting. I would like to discuss that with you to understand a little more about that gap. I'll come back to you later. I'm moving to Mohini now. Mohini, it's a fact that most of the financial products and services today are not marketed in a language that appeals to women. So as a financial advisor or as a consultant, do you feel that this hampers women in developing interest and gaining knowledge of financial concepts and products? Or women investors to take a lead in seeking out solutions for platform that speak in their language?
So I think that is definitely preferred, a product that does not talk in jargons or does not talk about really high level concepts. But having said that, I think it's not just a women specific thing. Okay, when you talk in a language that does not appeal to like a common person, it affects both men and women equally. From my experience, what I've seen is women are more conscious about the fact that they possibly don't grasp the concept very well. Whereas on the other hand, like the men are okay sometimes, for the lack of better terms, like winging it. let's try it and let's see it sort of a thing. So it's that confidence difference. I mean, it's a very gray area to say whether that's good or bad, but the effective communication of what the product is about, I think it affects both equally. It's just how they react to it. So the women react and respond in a way that, okay, if this is something I don't get, I'm not going to put my hand into it, that sort of a thing. So if maybe to reach out more to them, yes, simplified products with just jumping straight to the basic features and why you should invest in a product or why you should buy that product, rather than talking a lot about, like the other frill that surrounds it. That should definitely help.
Okay. So it is like there are a lot of platforms for men today, but very few for women. Still, you're saying both men and women, both platforms need to change the language to be more appealing to customers.
Because in fact, it's sort of riskier if somebody gets into a product not completely understanding, what it is about. So I feel that's way more riskier than staying away from a product because you don't understand it. So simplification is required at all levels, definitely. But yeah, you're right. That catering of the way in which you're putting it forward, say with relatable examples or understanding their struggles, I think that's important.
Okay. Thank you, Mohini. I'm now moving to Anjali again. Anjali, what according to you is an effective investment strategy for women? And what is the role women should play in money decisions, especially in this post-crisis, post-COVID situation where every families or many businesses are facing the crisis?
Yeah, so I think we've all been through a very, very strange and crazy year. And we know we live in a VUCA world, highly volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And the higher the rate of uncertainty, the higher the need to have risk managed plans, right? Because you've got to have a plan for a rainy day. We've realized how uncertain life can be. None of us had foreseen something like this would play out and a whole year would get washed out. And life as we know it will change forever. But what have we learned and how are we smarter? Clearly, a lot of people have understood that it is important to save and save well. It is important to have insurance. It's important to have term insurance. It's important to have health insurance. It's important to have endowment plans, investment plans. And I think what women can do, more importantly, is that women somehow are good planners for the home, for the family, for long-term, what is called life goals. And life goal planning is where I think they can play a very critical role. Men tend to be a little bit more tactical in their decisions, like a quick buck here, make this, 2 years, buy this car, go for this holiday. It's not that women don't want it, but women are a little bit more longer term plan. No, I want to have this money for my, child's education when he turns 18. Or I want to save for that home on this year, or I want to have this kind of money at retirement, whether it be income or a certain corpus or so. I think that's the ability to sort of bring out the need for ensuring that those key life goals or plans have a certain certainty of fruition because they have some sort of a financial plan backing it. It's not just a dream in the air. And we had done a study where we talked about how good Indians are at dreaming. And we realized that our dream quotient was 70 and our planning quotient in supporting those dreams was somewhere less than 30. So it was a study that we had done 3 or 4 years back around financial literacy in India, how good dreamers and planners we are. So, that's what it is. You dream, but if you don't put a plan behind it, how do you know it's going to happen? Especially dialed up when you have such an uncertain world, when you're coming out of such an era. So I think one is the focus on life goal planning and putting goals behind it and understanding that what kind of money I would need, not just in terms of volume, but in what format will I need it? Will I need it in one shot? Will I need it over a period of time? And that's as an individual, but even as an entrepreneur, what are going to be my rainy days? How far am I provided? When am I going to run out of funds? What particular operation, what EBITDA am I running on? What if business goes down? Because when COVID happened, a lot of businesses were impacted. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs who went back and literally redid their models to say, how do I become more frugal and how do I economize? And a lot of them had to raise funds earlier than their plans before. So, those are things that one has to create scenarios to say, what if scenario A plays out? How am I funded? What if scenario B plays out? How do I manage that? And so on. So being able to apply that kind of thinking is very important. And last but not the least, the role that we play as mothers, I think, is a very important role in shaping a more financially literate generation after us. Because, children learn what they see their parents do. So if women today can start taking bold decisions, they will raise a generation of girls who also do that, because you learn from what you emulate from your parents. And I think to bring about gender equality, to bring about more financial literacy, to bring about more bolder women who are more financially literate, who are confident to take financial decisions, it's important we groom them right from the beginning. And I think this is not a change that happens overnight. It takes years. But if all women can become conscious of that and start playing that role for themselves and for their children, then we will raise a better generation.
That's good to know. So it is like we Indians dream a lot and we plan very less to achieve our dreams. And yeah, that's nice to know. Moving to Swati. Swati, again, it's a question about women entrepreneurs. Women entrepreneurs, this is something which I have been also thinking about. Are women entrepreneurs limiting their dreams because they are so careful, or they take steps very carefully? Because when it comes to, for example, when it comes to funding, going for a VC investments or going for angel funding, these kind of things, do you feel women's intuition holds them back? Since they are not exposed all these kind of, all these opportunities that are available, especially at a very early age, or there are no role models of startups who have gone for funding and achieved, they have grown really big. So is it impacting women entrepreneurs when they come when they dream about their their venture and grow it big?
Again, I think from a direct answer point of view, Anjali may be able to answer that better. But no, not really. I mean, the set of people that we work with, someone said earlier, they are the, the millennials or the Generation Z. And these people are, they are to a certain extent go-getters, and they do want to, when they come into that whole entrepreneurship thing, they really are getting into it with the, with a certain goal and a certain impact that they have in mind. And they seem to be, it's not working on, at least the financial side of it is not working so much on intuition, because it's not like they say, oh, we have to raise funding and, you just go into the market and funders are available to hand over the money to you, right? You still have to have a full-fledged plan before you go in there to be able to get that kind of funding. So in very short, to answer your question, no, I don't think that is holding them back. But then again, our interaction is more with the set of people who have a lot of resources available to them, and belong to that group of people that are really want to go and make a difference and go achieve their goals. So that is the kind of people that we students and young children that we see that coming into entrepreneurship, not so much of where they're just, as for a lack of better term, Mohini said, winging it.
So I'm now moving to Jasmine. Jasmine, you have significant experience in consumer banking and have worked with a lot of women for understanding their financial needs and goals in life. Can you give us a picture in terms of what is their typical thought process when it comes to investments? Or how much do they rely on their gut feel or hearsay? And do you feel any change is required in this field, or what do you think? Are you happy with the current situation?
I think the most important and a very positive thing that we see across is that women have started showing interest in the bouquet of products that are available in the market. Also, as I mentioned earlier, we have segmented products in the market specifically for women. So if I have to give you an example, for example, if there is a savings account, a normal savings account that is offered to all the people, A woman's savings account will have much more added features in terms of, health checkup. For example, now why health checkup and a savings account together? The idea behind that is women tend to ignore their own health at the cost of, the health of the family, taking care of the family. They usually put their health, the last. So when we bundle a savings account with a free health checkup for, women, it acknowledges the fact that health is important for women. It makes them feel special that, along with my financial needs, my health, wealth, and happiness needs are also being taken care of. So a lot of bundling that goes into it. Now, for example, discount offers. Now, a lot of discount offers that are offered to women along with, any product or service that is bundled is very, very women specific, depending on what women would like to spend on. So that makes them, much more interested in the products that are available in the market. So that's why we have seen that when products or services are tailored to the specific needs of women, they appreciate and they definitely come forward to understand, learn, and take it. Yes, women would like to have an advisor. They would like to have someone, tell them what is in their best interest, and then they would like to make a decision. So, in contrast to a digital account opening experience and a non-digital account opening experience, we have more women opening non-digital accounts rather than digital accounts. Maybe because they look forward to that human interaction. They look forward to that relationship management that comes into play when, you open a relationship with any of the, BFSI service or product. And I think they value the advice that the relationship brings in, as contrast to men who would like to, go digital, do things on their own, try out do-it-yourself products just because they are confident enough. So that's where we have seen wherein 80% of the men would like to open digital accounts. Maybe 80% of the women would like to have a relationship-based approach to investing and in, starting a relationship with as far as their investments is concerned. So that's a difference that we have noticed in how men invest and how women invest. And I think now in this digital world, because we have the physical world as well as the digital world going hand in hand, I think it is a win-win situation for men and women both. And I think, as everyone pointed out, the Generation Z and even millennials that have grown up with technology, while technology is easy, I think these differences that we see still exist. So that clearly says that, men, women, investment patterns, investment styles will always differ. And even within women, for example, I have spent so many years in the financial industry, so I make my own financial decisions. In contrast to that, my sister is a pharmacist, and she would always depend on her husband to take the decisions, because while she is, equally earning member of her family, when it comes to finance, she would like to, not go forward to it because that would be considered as not my area of interest. So we have seen lots of doctors, engineers, IT professionals, they rely more on their bankers, they rely more on their investment advisors, because they feel that they don't know these things and it's better to get the best advice from the experts. So that's where I think men and women differ in terms of, taking advice and making investment decisions. That's my experience.
Yes. So it is more like for women, it's a personal experience when it comes to finance, and I mean, much more than men, right? So I think your last comment is again pointing back to Mohini, whereas she is an investment advisor and helping women and men both in their financial planning. So I'm moving to Mohini. Due to the lack of time, I have to just shoot a quick question. Like in the current situation, as a financial advisor, what would you suggest to your customers? Like what is more important, intuition or knowledge, or a mix of both? What is the kind of advice you will be giving to your customers?
So I think it definitely has to be a mix of both. You cannot choose either one. It's important to strike that balance. As Mr. Hemant also said right at the beginning, that in the right proportion, intuition can make you look like a winner, and in fact even make you a winner. But you also need to introspect where that intuition is coming from. Sometimes it could just be based on some experience which is not logical. You've seen or heard something, and that just makes you take irrational decisions. And at the same time, it is important to be understood that knowledge can be borrowed. When my clients come to me, they are in effect borrowing the knowledge that I have, right? It's not that they have to sit and study the products themselves, but intuition cannot be borrowed. So what works for them in their life is not something I can come up with regardless of how much I study the financial markets, or even I study their life. So for my clients, and for other investors in general, maybe it's not exactly a 50-50 thing, maybe like a 60-40 thing, depending on situation to situation. But you have to trust the knowledge of the source that you're depending on, but at the same time let your ultimate decisions be guided by intuition, but just make sure it's coming from the right place.
Thank you, Mohini. So, yeah, I would like to continue this discussion but we are running short of time. So I would just concluding this thing. So financial decision making is typically thought of as well-researched, studied, analyzed, and intuition is thought of as just the opposite, like irrational. And most investors do not look on their intuitive powers for solution, but many of them prefer to go with the knowledge that acquired from the market. So another thought is that intuition gets built over time, like through experiences, through data, through opinions formed in the past, and get embedded in our subconscious mind, helping us in decision making. However, when it comes to investing or personal finance or business, it is important to make the right decision at the right time. So as we acquire more knowledge from the market or from the industry, we learn to follow our intuition, our gut more and more. At the same time, a balance of both is required. Sometimes, even if we have all the data, still we'll have to take a judgment call or a call out of our gut feel. So it is like, I would like to, compare this as driving through a different route at a rush hour to get your destination faster. So sometimes it can also happen like there are too much of data and too much of advices from different sites, and human mind tend to get confused also. So again, it is pointing to one thing is that the right balance between intuition and knowledge is what is required. So with this, I'm concluding today's panel with these takeaways, and thank you for all the panelists. Actually, we have some questions have come in the chat box and in the live stream, but I think we are running short of time because the next panelist, Mr. Nick Gugar, is already here and he have to leave at 5:30. So I regret to inform the audience that what you can do is that if you can, we can take 1 or 2 questions out of this, and the remaining, I would request you, please leave your email ID. We will get it answered from the panelist ASAP.
Thank you, Ms. Nisari, and to all the panelists for that wonderful deep dive into the trade-off between intuition and knowledge-based decision-making in investment and entrepreneurship, and where the women of today stands on this. We have few questions for our panelists from our audience, so I'll just take few questions. So the first question is for Mohini, ma'am. That was an excellent observation by you when you said the language of finance should be simplified, be it for women or men. What then explains the fact that as of now, women are not that interested in personal finance as much as men are? Because the language used for all products should affect both men and women to same extent.
Okay, that's an interesting question, but the answer to that I don't think lies in the way the products are worded or how they are marketed. It again stems from the very traditional setup of how our brains are wired. Since historically men have been more like the providers and people who've been in charge of making those financial decisions, by default, those are things that, they take care of first. So it's not that maybe they understand it better than the women, although that may be the case sometimes. That role is more culturally deep rooted. So when you say women are not interested, it may not always be that, okay, it's because of the level of understanding. It's because traditionally that's not the first thing that clicks in their mind, that this is something I should look into. So I would again still stick to my answer with regards to the wording or the explanation level has to change for both. But at the same time, instilling of that confidence in women, that you can maybe take half a step out of your comfort zone. I'm not saying leap out of it, but maybe you can take half a step out of your comfort zone and just give it a shot and see how that works for you.
Thank you, ma'am. So taking the last question, this question is for Anjali, ma'am. Regarding your remark that for women and two brain hemispheres are more solidly connected, there is one Stanford study that says the differences in gray matter and white matter for men and women is because of the hormones that testosterone and estrogen play, especially in their early formative years. Your comment on this? How do differences in gray matter and white matter play out for the two genders?
Okay, now I'm not a doctor, nor a scientist, or not a neurologist to answer this in terms of how it plays out. But these are some of the things that we've picked up from my own interest in science. I've been a science student, but what I've picked up is that this whole thing of the second brain, which is that the gut cells have neurotransmitters and they're connected to the hypothalamus and send transmission from there. And that is a lot responsible for what we call intuition. And where it comes to the white and the gray, or the logical versus the creative or intuitive ability, it is scientifically proven that women tend to go between the two easier and faster, whereas men tend to linger on one side and stay with that lot more. And if they transmit to the other side, it takes a while, then they can kind of get stuck, stay with that at one point in time. But the ability to integrate both and move between them seems to be sharper in women, which is why the ability to take decisions that are intuitively based, but we said, as we've already arrived at, intuition alone is possibly never sufficient, but it's a good guiding force. It's a good navigator, so to say, to point towards which direction one must be going. But I think it's a good thing to deploy well-known facts and logic and reasoning, and then take a call.
Thank you, ma'am. As we are running out of time, so we regret that we cannot address all the questions. Thank you to all our panelists for taking the time to come and address. And thank you for that delightful session. Thank you to all. We now have on cards an interesting fireside chat with Mr. Dr. Nick Guggar, Member Foreign Commission and Member Council of Europe, National Councillor, Switzerland. Nick is an Indian by birth, born to a widow in Udupi district of Karnataka, a taboo in Indian society. And his mother was forced to abandon him at an orphanage in Thalassery, Kerala. To get a family for him, Nick Guggar was adopted by a Swiss family who were living in Thalassery. His adoptive parents worked as employees of the aid organization of the Evangelical Churches of Switzerland in India. Nick spent the first years of his life in Thalassery. When Nick was 4 years old, the family moved to Switzerland. Through his father's work in the Jutendorfberg Foundation, Nick had been involved in a lot of social work and activities, which includes disabled people, senior citizens, and children. Nick has been awarded an honorary doctorate by the Kalinga Institute of Industrial Technology in Odisha, India, for his social commitment to children and young people in Thalassery for children of all castes. He is also involved in strengthening relationships and trade between India and Switzerland, a startup mentor and motivator. Our moderators for the fireside chat will be Ms. Nisari Mahesh, founder and CEO of HerMoneyTalks, and Mr. Hemant Gurur, co-founder and CFO of HerMoneyTalks. I request the panelists and our audience to share their questions for Mr. Nick, if any, in the chat window. These will be addressed in the subsequent Q&A session. Over to you, Ms. Nisari and Mr. Hemant.
A very, very warm welcome, Mr. Nick, to this quick fireside chat. I'm so thankful for your interest in this initiative and the inputs you have shared with me and agreeing to join us in a very, very short notice, canceling your other programs for the day. Actually, we are really inspired by your life story, like from an orphanage in Kerala to the current position you are today. You are a people's person, and that's what we have understood from your profile. And we'd love to see how you keep India close to your heart, even after years you have left from India. I'm interested. I'm very much, that was very much appreciated to see that how you like to see the developments in India, the kind of initiatives you are doing to strengthen the Indo-Swiss relationship, the business opportunities, and much more. In fact, it was surprising for me that I was interacting with Nick, how updated he is about India and things there, even the COVID situation of India. So as we are running short of time, I'm sorry, I was kind of rushing through the questions to the other panel and with you. I'm quickly moving to the question as you have to leave at 5:30. So my first question is, what is your current priorities when it comes to India in terms of the economy, business, entrepreneurship, and trade?
Namaskaram. Thanks, Nizari, for the first question. As you said, I have to leave at 5:30. That will be in 7 minutes. So that's not fun. So I moved a little bit the next appointment, but we will go through your 5 very important questions because I think it's very important that we can share some thoughts this afternoon. So the first is, if there are any persons, they have questions, please send that on the chat. Then we can give you later an answer. I can give an answer to Nizari. So you are asking me, what are current priorities when it comes to India in terms of economy, business, entrepreneurship, trade, etc.? That's a very good question. And since I don't live in India, I can't say for sure. What is certain is that India, like Europe, must first get a grip on the corona crisis, as you said. But I think that's also a big chance now, also for the women's, because I say the world, the last 100 years will be totally changed because of corona. Then India should promote a dual education system. That's especially very important also for the women's. Training apprentice in practice and theory is the key to the future. As we heard, I grew up in Thalassery, Kerala, and there is, most of them know this institution. It's the name NTTF. You know what means NTTF, Nizari?
No.
No? Netto Technical Training Foundation. And that's the key. The Netto Technical Training Foundation is a good example for Kerala, but also for India. The headquarters in Bangalore. They train mechanics, electronics, computer science in a dual education way. And that, I think, is one of the priorities for India. I saw that last year or 1.5 years ago. The dual education system will be the big chance, I think, for India, because India should promote this dual education. And India has a young society. So it's important to invest in the use. I believe very strong in that. A good example, as I said, is NTTF. There are, I think, many others good examples. Then another issue for HerMoneyTalks is, I think, you know what is a Remini Hub? The Remini Hub is the Chinese financial center. And you know, China is rising. So we have to be very careful what's going on in China. So that's for your first question, my meaning. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Nick, for that. Now I'm handing over to Hemant to asking the next question.
Yeah, hello, Nick. Very warm welcome to you. It's a gorgeous Sunday evening here, Sunday afternoon for you probably. My colleague Nisri has already done a fantastic job of welcoming you, so I don't think I can add much to that. But I'll just say one thing, that I think we'll be welcoming your views as it's coming from, you're seeing in a different part of the world, you're seeing things that we may not be seeing. So I'm sure we, as well as our viewers, will welcome the global perspective that you'll bring to our discussion. So with that, I'll move to my question for you. Um, as someone who molds society and gives direction to the aspirations of people at large, what are your thoughts on the need for financial empowerment currently? Do you feel the time has come for India and Indian citizens to take charge of their finances and give themselves a chance at a better life? Maybe you could also juxtapose this with your experiences in Switzerland and try to bring out any differences or the thinking there in terms of financial empowerment. Over to you, Nick.
Thanks a lot for the question. As I mentioned, India must be vigilant as China is on the rise, and this will affect India a lot, also in the finance market. I am thinking of the Road to Belt initiative. You know the Road and Belt initiative, Herman? You know the Road and Belt? You know the
Yes.
RBN?
Yeah.
Okay. So the Road and Belt initiative scares me a little bit. Also here in Europe. You asked me about my European or international perspectives. So as I said, China is on the rise, and this will affect India. So as an example, for India and Switzerland, or also for Europe, is very, very important that India sign a free trade agreement, an FTA, with Europe and Switzerland. Because, for example, Switzerland and India, we have big problems for transfer the money in between these two countries. And there is needed a free trade agreement as an example. That's for your question, my answer.
Thank you, Nick. Over to you, Ms. Ali.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. So I want to ask you something different here. So when it comes to women and personal finance, or women and money management, how do women in Switzerland or even in Europe approach personal finance? I will just brief you the situation in India. The situation is in India is like mostly, even with the urban women, either the fathers or their husbands take care of the finances. And we have to achieve much more. We have to go much beyond when it comes to financial literacy or that active financial management. So that's how we are doing here. So I would like to hear from you, how is it in Switzerland, especially with the girls and women?
Thanks, Nizari. That's an excellent question. I would never dare to judge different countries, different customs. Nizari, you told me how is the situation in India? And when we prepared this session, I said to you, you know better how is the situation in India. But I come now back to your questions with an example from my daughter. My daughter was in the high school and want to study medicine. Then she get tired. And as I said in the first question, India has to invest in the dual education system. because I raise up also my career with the dual education system in Switzerland. So as I said, she got tired of school and she wanted to experience the real life. And now she did an apprenticeship at AXA Insurance with a high school training included. So she has, after this dual education study, the doors open. She can go 1 year longer in the high school and study, and then she can also study again medicine. And you know that better than me. In India, that's very difficult to get a chance in a dual education system. And my daughter, as example, she is now nearby a financial expert and specialized in insurance. And she said, "Hey, Dad, please let us start a firm. I want to be an entrepreneur woman. I want to be a role model, how we can invest." She's now 20 years nearby, and she want to invest, but she need also investors. And she means now Papa can invest in houses for her. I said, "No, that we can't do, but we can make programs." So she came and started her own business in fashion with clothes. And there she earns money, and there she can start to get the money in what she needs to buy houses and to resell. So that is what I think. We have to invest in the dual education also in India, especially for the young women's.
I like the way, thank you, Nick. I like the way you explain the need of a dual education through your own example. This kind of stories really inspires, people here to know what is the difference and what we are not doing at present. Thank you, Nick. I'm over to Hemant for the next question.
Thank you, Nisari. Nick, my next question has to do something with entrepreneurship and startup space. India has grown from strength to strength as a hub of entrepreneurial activity and also as an incubator of the startup ethos, the startup DNA, etc. Now, you may know that as recent as 2017, 2018 was a watershed moment for India. A lot of entrepreneurial activity, a lot of investment activity was happening, particularly in the fintech or the banking and financial services space. So it was of course, we were like any other country hit by COVID last year, but still the entrepreneurial activity has not ceased. It's still going on. Now, where do you see India moving in the next 5 to 10 years in this context as a hub of entrepreneurial activity? Are there any collaborations in the offing between Switzerland and India? And we would be very interested in knowing your answer to this last part of my question. Would you consider exploring collaborations in the startup space?
Okay. The last question, I can tell you it's very, very difficult to handle this with this example I said in between the free trade agreement. The collaboration would be a dream, but for the moment it's very, very difficult. But we will talk a little bit about that. I think I see a great potential for startups. The question is, who will invest in the startups? Because for the Swiss, India is a closed book. Can you understand that? That's the big issue for me. Nisari is a little bit laughing. I understand it because this closed book, I will bring an example. To Nisari and to you, Hernan, what do you think? How many Swiss people are living in India? Tell me a number, please.
Sorry, what was that?
My question is, it's a live example. How many Swiss people are living and making business in India?
Very, very less.
Excellent answer. And tell me a number, please, madam.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure about the numbers, but I know one thing, there are a lot of Indians living in Switzerland.
Okay. Okay.
A few lakhs maybe, but yeah, Nisari's answer is spot on.
Clever finance answer. Okay. It's an example. we have not more than 800 Swiss citizens in India. Can you imagine? In a 1.3 billion country, 800 Swiss people are living in India. And how many Indians are living in a country with 8.8 million citizens? What do you think? How many? Tell me a number.
Actually, the numbers you have mentioned is close to the population in one state in India, that is Kerala, which I have discussed with you. So the entire country's population is almost compressed to one state here.
Yeah, less. We have only 8.8. Kerala has, I think, 34 millions, right? So you must compare. Kerala has 34 millions. That's 4 times more than Switzerland. And we have in Switzerland 25,000 to 26,000 Indians who are working and study here. So that's why I mean, India is a closed book. And if we are dreaming a little bit in investment and finance, also for Indian social entrepreneurs, Indian women as an entrepreneur, I think we have to find the key. And one key, as I said, is the free trade agreement. That makes a lot easier in between the two countries, also for the finance wave. But another thing is the language and also the tourism. There are many possibilities to start. But if I compare, if I want to start in India, a company, also for me, it's very difficult. I have many friends in India, but you know, the mentality, the culture is totally different. That's why I said we have to beware, and also we have to take an eye. The Chinese are clever foxes in this case. They made a deal with Switzerland. They have a free trade. I'm not so happy about this free trade agreement between Switzerland and China. It's not so easy for us. So I think, as you ask me, if I consider a collaboration in the startup space or scene, also for me, it would be very, very difficult. Because who can I trust? Who understand my mentality? I'm a typical go-between. I can handle the Indians because I'm a native Indian. It's deep in my root. So I understand without words some difference in the mentalities, but it's not as that easy. And the other thing is also India have to maybe a little bit of change how we work. You know, the Swiss precision. You know, Switzerland is very known for Swiss chocolate, for Swiss watches. And I like to make this example, the Swiss watches, this precision. If we say sharp 6 or sharp 5, the train leaves. If you come 10 seconds too late, the train leaves. You can't jump in the train. So that's something what we have to learn to compare and to learn about in between these intercultural issues. And that, I think, is the big gap or also chance to learn how we handle this business possibilities in between Switzerland and India.
Yeah, so Nick, just a couple of quick things on couple of quick data points to help you make up your mind on doing business in India or bringing the business to India. According to the latest rankings of ease of doing business, India is at the position of 63, the 63rd ranked country in terms of ease of doing business. And since you mentioned China in fact is at 85. So it's a lower ranked country in fact compared to India when it comes to ease of doing business. That's number one. Number two, just a quick interesting factoid in terms of the populations that you are mentioning, that Switzerland is just 8.8 million, and Nisari was mentioning that you can compare that to one state, but in fact you can compare it to one city. In fact, Bangalore alone has got 10 million. So it's a large market. The logic is unbeatable. in terms of doing business. You will have to ask yourself, why wouldn't you do business? But I understand your point in terms of the FTAs. There needs to be some procedural formalities that need to come in. Yes, so point taken. Over to you,
Thanks.
Mr.
Yeah. Actually, there's a lot of interesting points coming out, and I am sure even I am feeling more questions to ask, but we are running short of time. So I'll just wrap up with the last question, which I have. So Nick, you are an experienced dignitary in public life and have traveled extensively around the world. So we would like to hear from you or your words of wisdom for the young working professionals and entrepreneurs in India, and especially the women. What makes you feel good when you see the youth of India taking chances and daring to chart a career amidst the competition and all other constraints we Indians are facing?
Yeah, thanks a lot for the last question, and thanks also for the chance to talk with you and to share. As most of you know, it pays to invest in IT, and we have many Indians who are also involved in high-tech companies in Europe. And as I heard from Herman, in Bengaluru has 10 millions, and Bengaluru has a big chance. Bengaluru is, we can compare 10 millions, 8.8 Swiss citizens. So I think that's the chance which we have to catch. The Indians are good brains. So it's important that women are exposed to mathematics and numbers, including programming. And I saw that with my daughter. She's excellent in mathematics. She is also an excellent communicator, and she can train that, or she trained that in the last 3.5 years. And I train her every day. We have everyday discussions about communication and mathematics and finance. So, as I mentioned, to invest in women's, especially in the young generation, but also in the elder generation, we have to empower the women's. Regarding the systemic constraints, I'm glad that a cultural change is taking place now in India, or I hope so, but it needs time. But I'm aware that it's not so easy for the women's. So as you see in my background, the Swiss cross and the Indian wheel, the chakra wheel, I wish for India to see in a surrounding, prosperous way, especially for the women's. And that's why also my logo as a Swiss-Indian Parliamentary Group president. I want to connect, or I dream that it comes one day. Maybe you saw in the newspapers, I dream that in the next 2 years, we get till 23 free trade agreement. That will help a little bit. So I can say, as last quote, and maybe you know that quote, who believes can move mountains. When you introduce me, if you compare that with my story in my life, I lost in the first 5 minutes or also 5 hours, when my mother gave me birth, I lost everything. I came naked. I will go naked from this world, but I realize we can move mountains if we believe. So that was my last quote. I simply like to encourage Indian women to get their own way. Go what you believe, follow your heart, and you will have success. I hope so. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks a lot for your time with us. If you have time, can you take 1 or 2 questions from the audience? Or
yes,
you prefer to be emailed to you?
Maybe because we are 15 minutes with a delay, and I wrote you very clear, I will move the next meeting around 15 minutes. I moved that. I said we have a Swiss clock, very sharp, like the wheel in my back, like a clock. So I prefer
Yeah, you
that you
mentioned
send me the questions.
Sure, I'll send you the questions
good.
in that case.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Nick, so much for joining us.
Thanks you, and see you, and all the best. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
As we enter the home stretch of the event, I would now like to call upon Mr. Gaurav Prakash, Chief Strategy Officer at Zone Startups India, to say a few words by way of closing remarks for the day. Mr. Gaurav is the Chief Strategy Officer at Zone Startups India, a part of BSE Group. He is an ex-City banker turned entrepreneur who is extremely passionate about contributing to the innovation ecosystem. He devotes his spare time in helping startups to scale and also teaches venture funding to management students at Symbiosis Institute of Business Management, Pune. Mr. Gaurav, over to you.
Thank you, Manisha. Thanks a lot for inviting me today, and to the entire team of HerMoneyTalks. Would not take much time, but certain thoughts came to me as I was going through the session, attending the session of today. Very interesting discussions. No, I would want to begin by sharing certain aspects of Zone Startups. We at Zone Startups India, which is a part of BSE, are one of the leading innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem of our country. We have a strong global connect as well. While we've been running various incubation and acceleration programs over the last 7 years of our existence, it's been our women-centric flagship programs. Two of them, the virtual incubation program for women entrepreneurs, which we launched last year, and Empower, which has been our accelerator program, and we completed the 5th edition last year, have been the two most impactful ones and those which have been runaway successes. In 2022, despite COVID, we nurtured 75 women entrepreneurs and are extremely proud to share with you all that Nisari and her venture, HerMoneyTalks, are a part of the Zone family as our incubatee. Coming to the session and the event, which is Femvest, it has been a superbly crafted program targeting that segment of our society which needs financial empowerment, leading to financial independence the most. After all, the financial strength of women in the family is a direct reflection of the household's financial strength. This interactive and educative virtual summit, which we've seen over the last week or so, is one of the many initiatives that HerMoneyTalks has planned with the goal of creating financial awareness amongst women and educating them so that they can understand the basics of financial risks, savings, wealth preservation, as well as wealth creation. While we do have an increasing number of women in the business and corporate world of today, working alongside men, and that is one aspect which we are all proud of. But it is also startling to note that many of them are still dependent on their husbands, fathers, brothers, and sons as far as financial decision-making is concerned. They tend to go out seeking advice, and here is a platform which I'm sure has benefited them. While the world of finance appears complex and intimidating to most, actually it's not so, especially those aspects that concern consumers like you and me. HerMoneyTalks has taken the task of making it easier for women to understand the financial concepts and take informed decisions. Even I would like to add that our financial regulators have been doing a great job in creating the right environment and laying the procedures for building as well as selling financial products in the country, especially from the consumer suitability point of view. We all know the typical example, which is of mutual funds, a great example where all of us can recall the fast-paced disclaimer The messaging in the advertisements which says mutual funds are subject to market risk. Please read the scheme related documents carefully. This has been an aspect which has become mandatory today. I'm sure HerMoneyTalks will enable you with the basic know-how so as to read, understand, and appreciate financial products and their documentation. They will also be able to handhold you as and when it is required, whenever you are taking a decision to buy a financial product. Overall, one would like to share with all the attendees today, specifically related to this whole initiative over the last 1 week. And it's been a sheer delight to share that Femvest has been a success. There have been over 1,000 viewers who have come and attended and taken benefit out of this. And there have been 20 plus speakers and panelists who have participated. Even some of my connections who attended these sessions had great feedback to share. Our congratulations to Nisari, Hemant and team, and gratitude to all the speakers, contributors, and partners who have supported Femvest, especially our own BSE India, along with CII and Mire Assets. I take this opportunity to wish Nisari and her team all the very best, and may she carry the flag of women entrepreneurship far and wide in her mission to financially empower women. With this, would like to thank you all. Stay healthy and be empowered. We all have to move mountains, and it is capability and skill that is required. And if not we, who else will? That is the message I take from what Dr. Gugar had said. Thank you once again. Over to you, Manisha.
Thank you, Mr. Gaurav, for those thoughtful words. I now request Mr. Ish Anand, investor, mentor, and strategic advisor, to conclude the session of the day. Mr. Ish has over 29 years of work experience in management consulting, co-living, student housing, e-commerce, ITES, real estate, sports and wellness, infrastructure, hospitality, learning and development, entrepreneurships, startups and private equity. Deeply involved in the SMS, MSME, and startup space over the last few years, he coaches and mentors a number of organizations in their journeys. He sits on advisory boards of various companies and is associated with some of the top accelerators in India. Mr. Ish, over to you.
Thank you very much, Manisha. It's indeed a pleasure to be here at the concluding day for the Femvest. I think my congratulations to Nisari, Hemant, and the entire team of HerMoneyTalks. The sponsors who very graciously come out and supported this fantastic event. I think Femvest, the 7 days and the concluding day, fantastic array of women industry leaders, Nick, and everybody else who's participated has been an eye-opener. It's been something which will go a long way in making sure that the women leaders and the role models that they wish to create for young women entrepreneurs, corporate leaders, etc., would be a huge encouragement. Having said that, I think I'll just take a few minutes and give you some very relevant data and touch on one or two small points that will hopefully go towards opening a few more eyes. So India has a stated goal of being a 5 trillion economy in the next few years. How do we get there? Without the active participation of each and every woman in this economy, right from the mother in the house to the corporate leaders who are women. I think each one has a huge role to play. Not just that, I think all of us, whether it's men or anybody else, we need to ensure there's one big word that is addressed, gender equality. And without gender equality in this entire scenario, I don't believe we can be a 5 trillion economy. Now, the United Nations has some very interesting figures to share. See, the impact of delivering gender equality in India would be $700 billion of added GDP by 2025. Now, can you imagine what impact that would make? Just gender equality would add $700 billion to our economic GDP by 2025. It's an eye-opener. I think we all need to work towards that. The IMF, has a figure that, it's pushed out, where they state that an increase of women participation in the workforce would add GDP by 27%. So should we achieve gender equality and we're able to address that issue effectively, 20%, 27% of GDP increase in the economy, what an impact it would have. I think we all need to make use of that. We all need to ensure that we contribute in our own ways. Next figure that you really need to look at is, and this is what is disturbing to some extent, but I think it's moving in the right direction. 6% of the Indian Forbes Fortune 500 list has women leaders as their CEOs or managing directors or chairmen. Only 6% of companies in the Fortune 500 list in India. However, when you compare that towards the similar figure in the US, it's 33%. See the difference, 6% versus 33%. So we have a lot of work to do. However, I think we've got some fantastic women leaders. I think they are great role models and something that we all need to look up to. In terms of number of companies, it's just 29 companies in the Fortune 500 list, which have Forbes Fortune 500 list, which have women leaders, versus a huge number, which is different in the US. What's also very, very important to keep in mind is the government is pushing out a lot of very positive initiatives and regulations, which would help bring up women leaders in various organizations. Now, in India today, women hold 17% of board positions, but only 11% of leadership roles. This is something that needs to change, and this is where role models will come up. Now, having listened to some of the women leaders who spoke earlier, I think a few points that came out very, very clearly were that you've got empathy, you've got great money management skills, and you've got the entire scenario of developing a future generation of youngsters who could come up and change this scenario very, very positively. I think you've got your mothers in the household who play the largest role. One of the panelists on one of the other days, Radhika Gupta of Edelweiss, spoke and gave a case study about her mother and what her mother did over the years, right from her younger days when they lived abroad, and how she cooked meals and hosted parties at her stint overseas with her husband, who was a diplomat, to the time today when she also manages a large educational institution. But at the same time, during COVID, she managed not just the large institution, the kids, the teachers who taught there every day, but also a fantastic household where her husband had special needs in terms of food requirements, etc., to Radhika and her husband and Radhika's brother and sister-in-law, all in the same household, being managed by her mother with very little or almost no household help. So that shows the management and the empathy that women can bring to the workforce. how they can plan, how they can ensure that they deliver what is actually required and what is good for everybody. I've through the years worked with some fantastic women leaders, and I'm so happy and proud to say that, I mean, they stood heads and shoulders above everybody else. And I've learned a lot from women leaders. I continue to learn a lot from women leaders. And I'm so happy and proud to see Nisri doing some path-breaking work, and very happy to help her in that journey. And I think I've enjoyed interacting with her, Hemant, and the team. And hopefully we'll see this being a huge initiative in years to come by. So once again, thank you very much. And I wish you all the best. And we hope to see many, many great and big things come about in years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ish, for that wonderful close. I now request Mr. Ganesh Ram, Head Mutual Fund, BSE India, to say a few words on behalf of BSE India, our event partner. I guess he's not in the panelist. Maybe logged on. So continuing, so I request Ms. Nisari Mahesh, founder and CEO of HerMoneyTalks, to give the vote of thanks and conclude the summit.
I'm not taking much of the time. A heartfelt thanks to everyone helped and supported this initiative of HerMoneyTalks, and our women community members and viewers who finally made this a big success. Each one of you have supported in a different way, like through words, actions, help, guidance, and much more. There is no one word of thanks. It has to be a personal note. That is what I believe. So I'll reach out to you, all of you, soon personally, and look forward to your continued support in our other initiatives too. Thanks once more for being with us today, and look forward for many more milestones in the months and years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nisari. It has been a fabulous assortment of talks and panel discussion at Femvest 2021, with each speaker adding to our repertoire of insights and adding to the takeaways from this event. At Femvest 2021 comes to a close, we would like to take a moment to thank our partner organizations and collaborators. HerMoneyTalks would like to place on record its heartfelt gratitude to BSE India, our main event partner, and to CII-IWN, our channel partner. Next, we would like to thank Mirai Asset, our knowledge partner, for the insightful educative sessions. Our deep sense of appreciation also goes out to Banking Frontiers, our organizing partner, and our media partners, Times of India and Startup Times. Finally, we would like to place on record our warm gratitude to all our ecosystem partners, Kerala Startup Mission, Zone Startups India, Wadhwani Foundation, and Startup Odisha, as well as to all our outreach partners, LinkedIn Local India, Confederation of Women Entrepreneurs of India, Women Entrepreneur Network, Indian Institute of Management Sambalpur, Lean In Circle, Iron Lady, Queen, Workjar, Startup 201, VNV, and Women's Web. As we bring Femvest 2021 to a close, we hope to see you all at our next edition of Femvest, which promises to be just as exciting. Meanwhile,
I am Anisha. This is Ganesh. No, sorry, I had exactly at the moment I got a network issue.
Sure, Ganesh. We were expecting you.
For that.
Just from your yes.
No problem. I was there when Nick was talking. Sorry about that. So yeah, first of all, really want to thank HerMoneyTalks, Hemant, you and Nisri, I think fantastic event. I think it's been very successful. I think I was telling Misty also a couple of days before. I think you guys have become extremely popular, right? At least in all those, at least my connection I have. So there is quite a lot of momentum which is getting created. So I would kind of request you to kind of carry on. Great speaking, great speakers. We kind of lined up quite different. Even I was there today for the speakers. Quite interesting, but one thing, on the lighter side, I would not say women are great as compared to men, okay, on the lighter side. But yeah, but do feel, I think, economically, I think women have more inclination toward investment. I think the way they kind of manage financials is quite better. So I would kind of request HMT, which is not HerMoneyTalks now. After hearing Nick, I heard it's a mountain. So it's HerMoneyTalks, her mountain talks, right? So you can kind of rename that. So I think I wish all the best for HMT. I think there's a lot of discussion on financial inclusion, how women can get empowered. I would have definitely asked a question to Nick to see how women are empowered financially in Switzerland. I never know that. Okay, but considering, I think, Western countries are not as great as like India, so I would have heard from him. I'd love to hear from him. So congrats again. I think, just keep up the momentum. I think there's a lot of opportunities to do, and women can make a huge difference to our financial inclusion, and they can bring a lot of stability. Okay, thanks for having me, and all the best.
Thank you, Ganesh, for joining us. Sorry, Ish and Gaurav, I was on mute earlier. Just want to thank you both of you for joining us, taking time out from your schedules, and being our well-wishers. Good to have you with us, and Ganesh also for joining us at the end of this event. So Manisha, Manisha can close it. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Meanwhile, it's a goodbye from all of us at HerMoneyTalks. Thank you all for joining.
Best wishes to all of you.
Thanks.
Thank you.